All right, literally going to give him 2 minutes.
Rob, can you do what you did last meeting? Make the people put their names on instead of iPad?
Oh yeah, no, that's gonna happen. There he is, Mr. Tansey.
How you doing, everyone?
All right. We got over here, me, Mr. Baker, Mr. Tansey, Mr. Galvin, Mr. Haynes, Mr. Galley. I know I saw Mr. Brennan. Mr. Brennan is here. All right. And again, this iPad, whoever this iPad is, you gotta log in with an actual name so we know who we're talking to. All right. Well, I'm gonna, Mr. Rubel, I see you. And All right, and I am now the host. So if this meeting gets out of order, you're getting removed. And whoever this iPad is, if you're not logged out and logged back in with an actual name, I'm going to remove you.
Rob, I just texted the person and told them to please input their name.
Okay. All right, so we got that going. Everybody's here. All right. First and foremost, welcome everybody to the January 25th meeting, January 25th, 2022 meeting of the Rockland Zoning Board of Appeals. Let's see, everybody, all members of the board and associate members of the board are participating remotely. That would be myself. That would be Robert Baker Sr., Robert Baker Jr., Mr. Gregory Tansey, Mr. Tim Haynes, and Mr. Stephen Galley. All right. Need a motion to open the meeting.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
I got a motion. I'm gonna motion and second Baker to Baker. I need a roll call. Myself is yes. Mr. Baker Sr.
Yes.
Mr. Baker Jr.
Yes.
Mr. Tansey.
Yes.
Mr. Haynes.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. Okay, I've got no Kim here. I see Deb's here. What, Deb, do you have the minutes from the, I guess, all the other meetings for this? Do you remember who's voting on this?
I do not.
All right, I believe it's full board.
I got a list.
Yeah, do you know if it, Mr. Galley, do you know if it's full board?
I think so. You, Mr. Baker, Tansey, and Haynes.
Okay, that's full board. All right. All right, so open the public meeting. Let me read the advertisement. 6:30 p.m. remotely conducted continuous public hearing will be held by the Rockland Zoning Board of Appeals on Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. on an application for a comprehensive permit dated October 12th, 2021, filed with the town clerk on October 22nd, 2021, to construct 4 detached single-family homes on the property known as and numbered 320 Concord Street, Rockland, Massachusetts, containing 28,937 square feet, more or less, known as the project. The applicant, Wall Street Development Corp., is proposing that 25% of the units be classified as affordable, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, and its implementing regulations. The project is located at 320 Concord Street, Rockland, Massachusetts, as shown on the Rockland Assessors Map number 57, parcel 70, and is situated in the R1 zoning district. The project application, narrative plans, and reports may be viewed by appointment in the offices of the Zoning Board of Appeals with the regulatory coordinator or at the town clerk's office located in the Rockland Town Hall. We all know where that is. All right. Before we get going, I got a call from the Oval Office. Apparently, there was another meeting scheduled with the planning board on today's date for 365 Concord Street, and there was a lot of there were several phone calls into the selectman's office talking about, well, why would you do this? It's two different. It's 2 projects on the same street. We want to go to both. Why did this happen? Blah, blah, blah. So it's understood that people would be a little bit concerned about this. There was no ill intention meant. It's just with the 40B application, it was started pursuant to statutory time periods when it comes to the application. And because of such, the 30-day, every time we continue 30 days out, it always falls on an odd situation. So that's the only reason why that happened. I was asked to talk about that, and that's about it. So we've got a whole bunch of documents that came in. I'm gonna look to Pat Brennan first. How you doing, sir?
Good. Pat Brennan with Amory Engineers. I'm wondering if it might be beneficial to have Eric from McKenzie Engineering to go through what the changes are since the last hearing.
Absolutely
can't-
understood.
I can if you want, but I think he's probably better suited to do that.
No, I understand that. My big concern was, have you had the opportunity to review all the all the different
Yes.
documents that came in?
Yeah, and I sent a letter in last Friday
Okay.
of my review of the revised documents, but
Yeah, that we have, and it's in the, we're in receipt thereof. I just wanted to make sure that there was nothing else extra that came in. If there was anything else, then we can't really talk about it, but Mr. Shoemaker, where are you? Right there.
Here.
How you doing, sir?
Great. How are you?
Not too bad. Talk about the project, sir.
Excellent. Do you mind if I screen share?
Please do.
All right. Okay. So these are the revised plans here. Revision date of January 3rd, 2022. So since we last met, we got a review letter from Pat Brennan, as you stated. So we worked with him. We made some changes to the plan and submitted just a response letter to him. Just a quick summary of the changes. We'll start here with the emergency vehicle turnaround area. We added a 22-foot wide emergency vehicle turnaround area between buildings 3 and 4. Also included in this was there we go, vehicle turnaround plan. So we took the Rockland aerial fire truck, which we've used in the past for projects in Rockland. We got the specs from Deputy Heaney, and we just showed the largest fire truck in that fleet backing up into the turnaround area and exiting the site. Also included in this, some revisions were a guardrail at the end of the access driveway, as well as adjacent to the rain garden. Just going through the letter quickly, we added some no parking signs on the fire lane. I got Pat's latest review comments earlier this week, and I'm going through that now. I have that almost done. We'll be adding some striping to this as well to delineate the no parking. There's also no parking signs provided on the side of the road here. So it's clear that, parking is not acceptable on this way. The access drive needs to be kept open. We submitted a landscaping plan prepared by a registered landscape architect, as well as some revised architecturals and a lighting plan as well. We can get into that a little later. So as you see here, we expanded the footprint from the previous, we'll just call it a rectangle. So we added, you'll see in the architecturals, some bends to the facade here, as well as rear deck and stairs that increased the setback from 15 to 14, I believe. We met with the water department, Lou and I, earlier this week. We received conditional water approval. So we're in line to receive some connections to or a connection for our 8 or 6-inch main to the main out in the street. We coordinated moving on here to the utility sheet quickly, we coordinated the relocation of this hydrant with the fire department and water department. I spoke with Joe Lapointe as well as Tom Heaney. So we discussed this hydrant as well as what's located at the end of the street. There was no issues with that. Yeah, that generally covers the plan changes. We made some minor changes to the BMPs and the drainage and submitted waiver lists, things of that sort as well. Some supporting documents. I also had in my submission a cut and fill analysis. The site in total will be about 800 cubic yards of fill. That's a net, so that's subtracting the cut volume from that as well. So we'll be here to answer any questions you guys have, but that's the progress so far. And like I said, I'm in the process of going through Amory's latest review letter, making those plan changes as well. They look to be pretty minor. So.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Pat, you want to talk?
Sure. Pat Brennan with Amory Engineers. As Mr. Shoemaker alluded to, and I had mentioned earlier, submitted a letter to the board on this past Friday. In that letter, I restated what my original comments were from my December 9th letter, and kind of gave a summary of where we are on each of those comments. I'm going to skip over the waivers for right now. So I'll just go through the other things. Eric, the turnaround, as long as the fire department's okay with the turnaround, I think that's fine. We just need to make sure that they are okay with that turnaround. And as Eric mentioned, I in my letter, I suggested that be crosshatched with a striping, so it's shown as, so people know that there's no parking in there, because that's obviously going to be someplace that people are going to want to park if they're visiting somebody in there. It's got to be kept open for fire, emergency vehicles to turn around, and even delivery vehicles. Like Eric said, they did submit a landscaping plan. I did note that there weren't any proposed fences on that plan. And I know that was discussed previously, so I just wanted to point that out. On the new plans, Eric is showing some snow storage areas, which are basically in those landscaped areas in front of the units. And they've said that, once those snow storage areas are filled up, they'll haul off site. If the project is approved, I'd just recommend that be one of the conditions of approval, that snow would need to be hauled off site if there's not enough storage space for it on site. My other concerns that I raised earlier was the snow along the south side or the right-hand side of the driveway as you pull in, because that drops off to the abutter's property. I was concerned about snow windrows being plowed over there, and then as it melts, just running off into the neighbor's yard. In their response, they say that they will not store it on that side of the roadway. And I think that's a great idea. However, I just don't know how that would be monitored and or enforced. Because the first thing a plow driver's going to do is he's going to angle his plow right and drive right down that side of the road. So it's just something to think about, how it might, the landscaping may deter that with some of the landscaping that they have along that side. But it's just a comment. They did submit some photometric plans to show how the light distribution would be from the lanterns that they're proposing. And so they actually submitted 2 of them. However, you'll notice that the foot candle notations are only within the paved footprint. That should be expanded to at least the property lines, or to where the foot candles go down to 0, just so we know that there's no light spillover onto that adjacent property. The applicant has said that they intend on having private trash service. As we mentioned previously, the water and the sewer, they need approval from both of those departments. Eric mentioned that they got conditional approval from the water department. obviously we want to see something in writing from the fire department about the, their satisfaction with the locations of those two hydrants, the one at the end and the one that they're moving. The one that they're moving out at Concord Street, I don't think is a big deal. The one at the end, I agree, it should be there for flushing purposes, but I don't think anybody will ever use that in the event of a fire, because they're not going to put a truck in that fire if one of those buildings is on fire. Again, like I said, the sewer commission, something from them. He did show erosion controls around the perimeter of the site. However, it wasn't shown along the very rear property line, so I've asked them to add it there. As Eric mentioned, roughly 800, maybe 850 cubic yards of fill would be brought into the site as a net import. For the subsurface infiltration system, which is the dashed rectangular area that you see in the center, kind of right side of the site there, I'd like to see a manhole on where the pipe enters at on each end, so that you can have some way of getting in there to clean that for maintenance if need be. Currently, they just have inspection ports on that, which are only 6-inch diameter, which really doesn't allow for getting any type of a vector in there to suck out any sand or sediment that may accumulate in the bottom of that. And I can talk to Eric a little bit more. I have an idea on that I can talk with Eric about, outside of this hearing. The temporary sedimentation basin that they show on the plans at the rear of the site, they do show an emergency spillway from that. It is off to it shoots to that north corner of the project, which is the top left that you see there. So if that fills up and it discharges, it's gonna discharge toward the golf course. I'm just asking for a little more clarification in the long-term pollution prevention plan in relation to the homeowners association being responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater system. I think those are the outstanding issues at this point. I think, water and sewer are probably the two of the bigger ones, and, making sure the fire department is satisfied with the site layout and the hydrant locations. I think those are the three big things at this point in time.
Thanks, Pat. In your opinion, everything that we talked about or everything that you kind of brought up for additional changes, it's not insurmountable, correct? Doesn't sound it.
No, I don't believe so.
All right. Mr. Shoemaker, can you unshare your plan or unshare your screen for a second, just so I can see everybody that we're talking to?
Yeah.
There we go. All right, not too bad. I'm going to open it up to the board. Board needs a chance. Mr. Galvin, I see your hand right and you trump. So,
Yeah, Mr. Schumacher, could you tell the board what is envisioned for the entrance? The two properties that abut one another have a common driveway easement. How close will the closest driveway be to the new feature entrance? And is there any common portion of it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Let me open the plans for you.
Do you see there's a sewer easement?
Yep. Running, yeah, between 330 and 320.
Is that a driveway as well, or is it just sewer?
The driveway, from my understanding, I'll let Lou elaborate if he needs to. My understanding is it's just a sewer easement.
Okay, it's not a driveway, it's just a sewer easement that straddles the boundary line?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
It's 15 feet wide.
And are there existing connections for the former house that was on 320?
When the house at 320 was torn down, we capped it.
Okay.
This is what it looks like. Existing conditions. You can see the easement extending pretty much in the property line. We located the pipe itself. It favors the lot at 330. So we obviously call for the sewer manhole in this area to be retained, as well as the connection to 330. And like Lou said, we'll be removing the service.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That was my question.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. All right, who's first in line? Mr. Baker Senior.
Couple of comments first is, like Pat Benham said, I'd want to see a letter from the water department granting you access to their water main for these lots, for these houses. Also the sewer department and the fire department, like to have you go up and see them and review that turnaround. I think that turnaround should be painted out with yellow marks and say fire lane only, with a sign that all vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. You know, no parking, fire lane, vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. And someone's gonna have to monitor that. So, and the other thing is, I think I want to see some kind of written from your lawyers and have Attorney Galvin review it, a homeowner's agreement on what each homeowner is responsible for the shared snow plowing, rubbish removal. If there's a water break on that line, down the line, who's gonna pay for it? Are they gonna pay for it through a private contractor? How would that work? Or would the Rockland Water Department repair it and bill the association? Who would own that water line? That's some of the things that I see, that we should have all the ducks in line before we do anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Baker, you good for right now? Mr. Baker Senior?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Baker Junior, you're next.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions, not central to the deliberations, but Mr. Shoemaker referenced parking restrictions within the lot. How would those be enforced? I mean, I assume one of the things that, or a couple of the reasons to have parking restrictions are certainly to allow for fire and emergency access, but also to ensure that the property remains attractive looking. So if on a regular basis or even an irregular basis, there are cars parked all over the no parking areas, how does that get resolved?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Well, we have, in the homeowners association, there'll be provisions for monitoring and, quite honestly, it's in the common interest of all the homeowners to enforce themselves. And I would expect each of the homeowners to be responsible and not allow parking in front of their homes or on the access drive.
To quote a former president who'd like to use the term trust but verify. Well, I'm sure it's true that we can assume that it's in the individual owner's best interest to see that that sort of thing doesn't happen. I think there needs to be some mechanism to ensure that it doesn't.
Well,
and that certainly can be addressed in the homeowners association documents. You need not resolve it here.
We'll do the best we can. I mean, obviously, even if it's a subdivision on a cul-de-sac, people park in the cul-de-sac or people park where they're not supposed to. We'll do the best I can. I think, quite frankly, in a small project like this, that the homeowners are more likely to look out for themselves and enforce amongst themselves rather than in a public forum. So
I can't tell you how many disputes arise over neighbors and parking. So
understood. We'll do the best we can with that condition, sir.
okay.
Mr. Galley looks like he has something to say about this parking situation.
Yeah, I got just a general question. I know the fire department's not here, but in the event of parking in a fire lane or something, is there like a anyone know if there's like a fine by the fire department or something involved with that? I mean, you know, in the event of a fire, they're gonna show up and be blocked if they're parked in a fire lane, but if they happen to want to enforce it.
They'll
Does that
push the
such thing
car right
exist?
into snow storage.
Oh, Mr. Galvin has something to say on that.
Yeah, so I agree with Mr. Petrozzi that when you have a condominium association, you actually have a better scenario than if it was just a private residence. Because there's multiple owners, there's a board that has a fiduciary duty to all of the owners to make sure that some of these things are enforced. And it is customary for me to review the master deed and the declaration of trust to make sure that these types of rules are non-delegable and non-changeable rules that the board has an obligation to enforce. And we can make sure that that language is added into those documents. So where this is proposed to be a condominium, it's actually better than if it were probably a homeowners association and subdivision, because the rules and the ability to enforce those rules are even more clear in the law. You hear all the time of people that didn't pay a couple of months condos fees having their condominium foreclosed on, you know, when they only owe $800 and they get a $5,000 legal bill because the lawyer took $5,000 worth of expenses to recover the $800. That's a story that happens all over the place. So I really do believe that if this is a condominium, that the things that we want to impose on them as a potential condition and include in their HOA documents and the condominium master deed are very enforceable.
Thank you.
All right, so we had Mr. Baker Jr.
Yeah,
we had Mr. Galley commenting. Mr.
Yeah.
Baker Jr., are you satisfied with the answers that you got so far?
So far, absolutely. I just
Okay.
have a couple of more questions.
Please do, please do.
Okay, thank you. I was looking at the plans, and I'm going to use the wrong terminology, I'm sure. But it referenced that the basement floor is going to be a foot above the historic high water mark, and that's where I'm sure I'm using the wrong terminology. Is that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, may I answer?
Yeah, please, if you want to have Mr. Shoemaker, he is the engineer.
So typically, when you're building new homes, if you're any kind of responsible kind of builder, you would not put any cellar floor below or lower than 1 foot above the high water mark or that's been observed or is determined by our engineers. Usually we do the deep hole test, we measure modeling and other things. And if this were a full foundation type home that we were building, we would not have a cellar floor below that 1 foot above high groundwater. In this particular instance, the homes that we are building are sort of raised ranches or split entries, as you may call them. And we're only going in the ground 3 feet. And so we're going to be well above any high groundwater that's been observed by quite a bit of distance beyond the 1 foot standard that we would like.
Okay, so you and Mr. Schumacher are both pretty confident that those basements are going to remain dry.
Oh, sure, for sure, absolutely.
Okay. I do have one other question, and I'm going to throw it out to anyone who can refresh my memory on this one. I know we've had some bit of talk about the sewer easement and the proposal of the plans that Mr. Petrozzi had expressed about making alterations to that easement. I don't believe that issue has yet been resolved. Is my recollection correct?
Mr. Baker Jr., I'm gonna step in here real quick. It's not a modification of the easement. The easement's always gonna stay in place, all right? The modification that's being proposed.
What runs to the easement, yeah.
Yeah, it's a sewer manhole that is located within the town right of way that sits over the pipe that comes from that easement. I'm going to call it my speculation that based on the language in that easement deed and based on parole information that I've overheard here and there, that the sewer department made both homeowners 100% responsible for that pipe all the way through the easement, all the way over the town right-of-way line and into the manhole that goes into the street. Based on what I've read, based on what I've heard, both properties are to maintain that entire line.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking to find out. Is
Yeah.
that, can he do it, basically?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I poorly phrased my question. I certainly was referring to the hardware that runs through the easement.
No, you knew what you were talking about. I hear.
And my further recollection is that the co-owner of the easement, or the co-custodian of the easement, at a prior meeting had voiced objections to anything being done to the extent of allowing 3 additional connections to either run through or attach into the pipe that runs out of there. My further recollection is that at some point, I thought Mr. Petrosi was asked to present from his counsel an opinion as to his ability to make the alterations that he wishes, which could then be reviewed by our counsel and or Mr. Brennan. But no,
Well,
I just want to make sure that that's still where we are on that particular issue.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Petrosi, any idea when we're going to get that letter?
Well, my recollection is that the board was going to ask town council for his opinion relative to the easement. I mean, obviously, if I present an opinion from my council, it's going to be favorable to Wall Street. I mean, obviously, that's the way our position is. So I think truthfully, you should ask town council to opine on it. It's really kind of, as I've said before, we believe that we have the ability to use that, especially since we're in the right of way. We're not in the easement, so the easement, in our opinion, is a moot point. So as far as I'm concerned, we have the right to do it, and I don't see any responsibility that would, or any authority that would prevent us from doing it. And may I say, regarding the maintenance of that line, I'm perfectly happy putting the responsibility for the maintenance of that line 100% on the homeowners association in the event that there is a interruption in service or a need for maintenance. So I quite honestly don't see that this being an issue that I need to be concerned about.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Chairman, go
man,
ahead.
Mr. Chair, we're all going to the same place, I think. Attorney Galvin, you know what we're talking about here?
Whether they can make any improvements in the layout of the sewer easement that are not sewer related?
No. Here's the thing. What they want to do is, based on the plans as presented.
Yeah.
They want to make the connection into the sewer system with a doghouse manhole that's going to sit on top of, basically be created around the pipe that's coming from the easement, but the location is within the town right of way. Now, here's the problem, or at least the problem that I see. When you look at the easement deed, and when you listen to what other people have said, the sewer department made both sides of the easement responsible for the maintenance 100% of the sewer manhole, the sewer line as it's going through the easement, all the way to the hookup into the street.
Okay.
My problem is that if that is the case and both sides are responsible for that, then the homeowner at 330 Concord Street would have to allow this.
Well, my understanding is it was a mutual easement to begin with.
We're not talking about the easement.
We're talking about the line itself then.
The line itself.
There's a singular line with basically a Y at the end, and one goes off to 330 and one goes off to 320, right?
Yeah. That's the end of, call it the end of the line.
Okay.
Or the beginning, I call it the beginning of the line, where everything dumped into to
Yeah,
get
everything
into.
dumps into the line heading towards the street from the Y,
Yep,
right?
yep.
You know, my belief is that if they're gonna share that line,
They're not going to share that line.
well,
Not
Eric,
within,
Eric,
not
put the
within,
plan up.
I thought they were gonna share the line.
not within the easement.
Mr.
What they
Mr.
want to do.
Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be easier for town council to see
There you
what
go.
we're doing. There you go. All right.
See where he's got his cursor? That's going to be the new that's going to be the new manhole that gets installed and created. That's
Okay.
going to straddle the existing pipe. The problem that I see is that the easement deed, all right, the easement deed calls out the responsibility of both 320 and 330 Concord Street to maintain 100% maintain that line as it's going through the easement, but all the way out to the street.
Well, I think it's a condition of approval for us to make sure that the developer and its successors and assigns, if that's the homeowners association, is solely responsible for that improvement that solely services this development.
How can we as a board alter the terms of the deed of easement?
Yeah, thank you, sir. We're missing something here. The
Oh,
easement as accepted, the deed as accepted said that they were 100% responsible for the entire pipe all the way through.
I'm not talking about changing that at all. If there's some
Okay.
existing obligation that remains, unless there's some other change, but with respect to what they're proposing to do here, I'm saying that the condition is that they're solely responsible to maintain it.
I'm trying to find out if they have the right to do it though.
Well, I mean, if the sewer department approves this design or allows them to connect with their own connection, the answer is yes, of course.
Okay.
So your interpretation, Mr. Galvin, is that this can happen if the sewer department approves and Mr. Petrosio, the HOA, is a successor, wants it that way, regardless of the other joint owners' wishes.
Yeah, well, they still have what other existing legal obligations they have pursuant to some other agreement. So that'll remain in force and effect on them. And this will just be something separate and distinct and only responsible to the developer and his successors and assigns.
Yeah, but I still don't see where they actually have the ability.
Well, I guess my problem is I haven't seen the easement, and maybe that's the issue.
Can I email that to you right now?
Yeah.
Let me get that to you right now.
Tell me when it leaves your box and I'll.
All right, use desktop. Save. And
Would they have to get permission from the owners of 330 to do any work to that sewer line?
that's what I'm trying to get to. That's my exact point.
They're not proposing to alter that line in any way, shape, or form.
But if let's just say let's look at this. If you own something and I own something jointly, if you want to modify it to some degree, regardless of what that modification is, you still got to ask me if you can do it. And if I say no, you can't do it.
No,
I don't know if it's that simple.
That's why. Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. That I'm trying to get to
It
that.
has not come through to my email.
I haven't hit it yet. Hold on.
Let me know when it goes.
Yeah, just trying to find it here. Street.
Yeah, and Mrs. Joyce, I don't understand what's going on. She's in the chat room. That's why I asked to see the easement deed.
All right, here it comes, uploaded.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, please.
This person, Susan Joyce, is she in a butter to this property? Is she a resident of Rockland, or what is her status?
She's a former owner of 330 Concord Street.
Okay, but my understanding, she doesn't live in the town.
That's my understanding too, but it's
You
a
know, I
public
have to
meeting.
object to this
She has
participation.
She has a right to speak. It's public, and she's just chatting right now anyway. So,
I know, but your chatting is vindictive,
I
as
mean,
we all know.
well, I mean, look at, she even has a right to speak, but she's trying to offer an opinion. So don't worry about it, Mr. Petrosi.
Okay,
We're going to look at it objectively, and I'm going to try to give an answer as soon as this gets to my
All right. If you've not
inbox.
gotten it, I did send it.
Okay, I have it.
Okay,
Now,
cool.
let me just look at it.
Yep.
I mean, the document itself basically requires them to jointly maintain and repair or replace the sewer line. And that's binding on successors and assigns.
It's been
And-
opined though that the problem is that the sewer department only allowed this to happen if both homeowners agreed to maintain the sewer pipe all the way into the street.
Okay, well, that's something that Mr. Petrosi will have to discuss with the sewer department.
Okay. Mr. Brennan, I see your answer.
Yeah, just so Mr. Galvin understands, where they're tying into the sewer line is in the right of way. And I believe once you hit the right of way, the sewer department owns the line, whether it's coming from an easement or not.
I
And
agree.
typically that is the case. Typically that is the case. But again, it's been opined at this point that the responsibility and the requirement to maintain was the entire length of the pipe all the way into the street.
Okay,
Whether
but-
that's right or wrong, I don't know.
All right, so
Somebody-
my opinion though is very simple. This agreement is binding on Mr. Petrosi and the successors and assigns. And if
Okay.
there's a common line there, regardless of whether it's being used, unless they modify that agreement, they have a shared obligation regarding that line that's in there.
Right.
So to perhaps to phrase it a little bit differently, Mr. Galvin, unless the other owner of the easement agrees, then the line can't be modified.
Um,
No.
No, I
I hear what he's saying, and I don't agree with that.
I really just want to keep it simple. This is an agreement between 320 and 330 regarding a line. And absent a mutual agreement to terminate it, it's still in force and effect. If Mr. Petrosi decides to do something different and the sewer department approves, then the answer is he still has this obligation and whatever new ones that he creates.
I think Mr. Galvin was right when he said it's up to the sewer department to figure this out. Because they were the ones that originally wrote the agreement.
Right. And so definitely we would need something from the sewer.
I mean, this is very straightforward to me. There's an
Right.
agreement between 320 and 330 for a common line. They're going to share the cost of installing, maintaining, replacing that line. Okay. If Mr. Petrosi gets permission to put in his own line, that's something independent of this agreement. It is not impacted by this agreement. He still has the obligation with respect to that other line. Unless the sewer department and the owner of 330 agrees to modify it with him. And that's not up to us, won't be up to us at all. That's how I see it. And I think I'm 100% right on it too.
I still, like, the board is still gonna need to see something, and I think Mr. Petrosi understands this. We're gonna need to see something from the sewer department that specifically states that the sewer department is giving permission to let this happen. Not just approval, not just,
I think
you
he,
know,
I
not
think
just
he,
connection.
I think he understands that, though.
All right, yeah, exactly. Saying as long, if we get something that approves that from the sewer department, that one specific thing, then I think that does start to put it to bed. Unless the owner of 330 wants to start a lawsuit and say, no, you don't have durability. And if they want to turn around and say that we believe that that's not the case. So it's really up to them. But in the end, I tend to agree that if the sewer department comes out and says that we were the ones that made the decision in the beginning, we're allowing this based on this, I think that covers it. Mr. Baker Jr., I think you and I are on the same page on this.
And perhaps my question was born out of a misunderstanding. I thought that Mr. Petrosi's plan was to tap into the existing sewer line, not to put in a new one.
No, he's not putting in a new one. This is my point. Mr.
So
Shoemaker, can you put that plan back up?
It
Same
looks to me like
place?
he's got a whole new line that connects at the same point.
No, it's
Yep.
not it's called a doghouse manhole.
I
It's
can
a
run through it.
manhole.
I'll run through it quickly. As you see here, the rear of each unit gets collected by a proposed, we'll call it 6-inch PVC pipe. We obviously have to bend the pipe, so we provide a manhole here. And then, as you said, they'll be installing a doghouse manhole on the existing line that's shared by the two properties. The doghouse manhole literally just sits right on top of the line. They'll core it. They'll connect the existing pipe on each end. So the service to 330 will remain. They'll still have the pipe running along the property line untouched within this easement. The connection will be within the right-of-way and the doghouse manhole, and then continue the remainder of the line in the right-of-way into the sewer service owned by the town.
And my opinion would be, to the extent that there's any modification of the line, it'll be the responsibility of the developer and not the responsibility of 330. And obviously they can't interfere with the sewer operation at 330.
Correct. We're in agreement.
Absolutely agreed. But again, I'm going to say it. It's been stated that in order to make this all happen, the agreement was that they were to maintain the entire length of the pipe all the way out to the street.
And we will do that. We're agreeing to do that.
I know, but if the people at 330 don't want you to do it, they can tell you no.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, there is, I don't want to get into case law or whatever, but there's case law that would allow me to even move that easement as long as it created the same amount of intent as the original easement. I mean, and as I've said previously, this is, we recognize the fact that we need to go to the sewer department and get approval of the design and the connection and make sure that it's done with the standards of construction that they're acceptable to the sewer department. We recognize that. We also recognize the fact that we're not going to be interrupting any kind of service to 330. And as I've said earlier tonight, if there's a responsibility and we want to take the homeowner at 330 off of that responsibility, we're perfectly capable and willing to assume full responsibility of the sewer service to their home. So, but we don't control the civil matters in the court. If like you say, that they want to make a claim that we don't have the right, please, they can go put their money down the sewer if they want.
We don't get in the middle of what the private rights are. That'll be not
Right.
involving us.
Right, that's understood. So basically what this board is going to need, what I'm going to need, is some document stating that you have the right to do this. Now, whether it has to come from the sewer department, I don't know. But based
When you
on the
say-
agreement that was
When you
made,
say, when you say right, what do you mean by right? The sewer department's gonna approve the construction and the methodology of the construction of this connection.
I'm not arguing the design.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
not
what do you
arguing
mean?
the design.
I'm not gonna go to court to prove that I have a right to connect in. That's something, as town council had said, that's a civil matter that if the homeowner that is the other party here wants to assume that we don't, then that's something that's taken up outside of this proceeding. It's simply not, we have the right, we have an easement, we have what we have. And it's not gonna change between now and the time that the board renders a decision on this, so.
All right, so Attorney Galvin, do you agree that he has the right to connect into the sewer manhole, or excuse me, connect into the sewer line within the right of way that was, again, stated that both homeowners have the right to have the right to do it. They're supposed to both maintain it.
I do. I actually think he does if the sewer department agrees.
All right, if the sewer department agrees. So we're gonna need to see a letter specifically stating that the sewer department agrees that you have the right to do this. Not the design. I'm not worried about the design. I believe the design is correct. I believe the design will work. The sewer department's gonna need to do that.
But we'll see, I think I scheduled a meeting with the sewer department, at the next meeting in February. So we'll have a discussion and we'll, deal with it at that point.
This is with the sewer commissioners?
Yes, please, yes.
Nice. Maybe I'll show up.
Yeah, perfect.
Exactly. All right, Mr. Baker Jr. You started a big one, sir.
I'm sorry?
Nothing. You got, are your questions answered at this point, sir?
They are, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate, sir. Mr. Tanzi. Better late than never.
Before Greg,
We already went by you.
I know that. But in the letter from the Wong family, the last paragraph is a lengthy paragraph about the sewer line.
We have that on the, let me get to the website and make sure we got that. Board. Say it again, Mr. Baker, it was the long letter?
Yeah, it's the
The Wong
dated
family
November
butters?
16th, 2021.
November
Regarding
16th.
320 Concord Street to the board from the Wong family.
And the Wong, okay, Wong family of Butters letter. All right, the Wong family, the reason, 320 Concord Street, Rockland, Mass, Dear Chairman, me, and the zoning board of appeals. That's the one you're talking about, Mr. Baker?
Yes, the
Which
last
paragraph you want me to get to?
paragraph, it says additionally,
All right, I'll just read it real quick. Additionally, our property had a shared sewer line that was connected to the former property of 320 Concord Street. How will this be formally addressed? Will there be any impacts? At the present time, we have received zero correspondence from the developer regarding this matter. For the record, we do not want our sewer service disrupted or disturbed by any and all means. There have been several instances where folks have encroached on our property and have shared sewer line without our consent. As a property owner, we'd like the property respected and be informed of the aspects of development to do for reasons to, okay. Now, let me back it up. I'm going to speak in defense of the developer. He's not gonna disrupt service.
right,
He's not gonna do anything that they're saying that they're worried that he's going to do. My question, and it still remains, is as to whether he has the right and permission to do it. Again, it's been opined at this point that both owners, 320 and 330, were responsible 100% for the sewer manhole, for the services to the sewer manhole, all the way down the pipe through the easement, over the town property line and into the sewer manhole. if both property owners have the right and responsibility of that, that tells me that the owners at 330 can turn around and say, yeah, no. I don't see how that, I don't see it, I don't see how that isn't correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I ask you, who are these opinions that you've referenced in your,
We're getting them from the former property owner and the current property owner.
but they're not, they're not.
They're not
legal.
lawyers. They're wrong.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but this is a matter that, if they want to go get an attorney to give them an opinion to provide to the board,
That's fine.
that's up to them. But, quite honestly, these opinions that are from third parties or parties that weren't party to the original agreement, to me, that's hearsay. It's just not, it's not accurate.
All right, that's fine. I appreciate that opinion. It's still not going to change the fact that I want something from the sewer department saying that you have the right to do it.
Okay, we'll get
Not
that.
going to, it's not going to change that.
But
Chairman.
Again, we cannot continue to reference opinions from homeowners who have a self-interest. I mean, it's just,
Well, respectfully, Mr. Petrosi, everyone has a self-interest in this, so let's not go down.
yeah, agreed. So that's why I said, if I present a legal opinion, it's gonna be in my benefit. And if they present a legal opinion, it's gonna be in their benefit. It's like a standoff, let's say. And
No, it's not a
usually-
standoff. Just show me a document that the sewer department says you have the right to do it.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. They were the ones who basically, from what I've heard and what I've read, made basically the restriction that said that both sides.
I think town council will say, I'm not gonna put words in his mouth, it's a public way. We have the right to do the work that we're proposing in the public way. It's owned by the town of Rockland. It's not owned by the homeowner at 330, and they have no rights in the public way. They have the same rights that we have, so.
Okay, then do me this. Then get me a letter from the town, from the sewer department, sewer commission, that states that they own the pipe from the manhole to the right of way.
Absolutely,
That's all you had to do.
okay.
That's
we'll do that.
really all I'm asking. If they own that pipe, then the whole thing's moved.
Okay,
I
Pretty
think we're getting bogged down in a detail that is almost inconsequential because no one is proposing to change the easement.
We're not
And-
talking about the easement. We're not talking about the easement. It has nothing to do with the easement.
I think the chairman is talking about who owns the pipe.
Exactly.
Is that,
That's
do
all
I have
I,
that?
that's all I want to know.
And who can do what to the pipe?
Correct. I think I have I think I
Oh,
have.
just so you know, I'll make it very simple. Once you hit the layout of the street, the town owns the pipe.
Right.
Not always.
In this
Always.
case, in the absence of an easement from the town owns the pipe from where it crosses into the public way.
Absolutely.
There may be an agreement for somebody else to fix it, but the town owns it.
Then the sewer department should have no trouble issuing the letter that the chairman has suggested.
I have no problems with that.
Perfect. That's all I want to see. That's all I want to see. Because typically that is the case. That is the case. You are the town owns or the department owns right up to the street line.
Right.
Except in this town, they own all the way up to the water department owns all the way up to the water meter. So
Well,
I mean,
we'll meet with the soil commission and we'll discuss it with them and we'll get whatever the board is necessary to give them a comfortable feeling with regard to the connection. I mean,
all I care about. That's all I care about. Mr. Baker Jr., yes, good.
Sounds
Yes.
good to me, sir.
All right, now we're going to Mr. Tansy. Big smiles, Mr. Tansy.
Well, I just want to make an observation that the connection manhole being in the right of way will be owned by the town of Rockland because it's in the right of way. The sewer department may or may not like that. I don't know. I mean, so I just throw that out there. Here's another observation. Under the original agreement, there's a house at 330 and a house at 320, okay? Both shared the connection. Let's say there's a $2,000 maintenance bill. No, the house at 230 chips in 1,000. The house at, I'm sorry, was it 330 and 320? The house at 320 chips in 1,000. All right. Let's say the same scenario happens with this development. Now, there's more flow from the development because there's more units. So what happens? You get a $2,000 hit. The abutter on 330 pays 1,000, and each one of the members or homeowners on the development, they only have to pay 250, even though in reality, they might be more of the cause of the maintenance issue, the clog or whatever, the pipe damage. You see what I'm saying? So
1/5.
So when under the original condition, all right, there was a stub from each house going into a common manhole, and then a line from that manhole out into the street sewer. And I think it was, and that connection in the street, it wasn't a manhole connection. Is that correct? Was I reading that plan right? It was a service connection.
Yeah, it's a weird setup. I've never seen something.
It was it looks like it was an 8-inch going into an 8-inch with in the street.
Core drilled.
It was
The
core drilled.
Core drilled into the pipe, and then they dropped the line.
Okay, so you've got an 8-inch going into, what was it, a 12-inch? A what?
It's a 30-inch line.
30-inch in the street. Okay, all right. Anyway, at any rate, there was now, okay, you've got 4 connections going in, or I should say 3 more connections going into that connection. Now, one of the things that the sewers have moratoriums about is it's not just the additional flow from each individual. You've got II situation. You've got longer pipe runs. You've got more manholes. You've got more leakage through covers. You've got condensation. You've got potential leaks in the manholes, leaks at connections. This is called inflow and infiltration, additional flows to the plant.
Mr. Tanzi, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Mr. Baker Senior?
Yeah.
Did you say they cored into the pipe or cored into the manhole?
The manhole.
They cored into the manhole.
Where?
Looks like, yeah.
I thought you said they took the 8-inch, the connection into the trunk line at the street.
That's kind of what it looks like on the plan.
Yeah, it looks like they took an 8-inch and they cored right into the
manhole.
It's a core into the manhole.
They tapped the 30-inch with an 8-inch somehow, tapping sleeve or whatever.
No, into the manhole. He's saying they
No.
cored it right into the manhole.
Right
There's
into
a
the
man-
manhole.
There's a manhole in the street?
Yes, I've opened that manhole up. They cored directly into it.
And can you confirm
Okay,
this?
all right,
Is that,
all right.
is that, there's nothing there's nothing to the east of that, right?
Can
That's
we
the end
see
of
that?
beginning
Can we
on
see
line.
the plan?
Yes,
can we-
that's the high point of the whole neighborhood, so there's
Okay.
nothing to the east, correct?
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
if you want to see the plan, Greg, I'll have Eric bring it up. But and what it's coming down to is from the proposed sewer manhole. I guess it got cored directly into the manhole, and there's nothing else east of it. That's the high point, and everything's flowing downhill from there. So all five dwellings are gonna be coming down into that manhole and going to the west.
Okay, so at that manhole in the street, right? That's the terminus of the manhole.
Beginning.
All right, the beginning. All right, the beginning of the manhole. Right here. Okay, so that is a manhole,
Yep, here we go.
but
It's the invert into it.
essentially you've extended the sewer. You've extended around and up and behind the last unit.
Mhm.
That's a sewer extension.
Do we have the grade? I'm assuming we have the grades to maintain gravity.
Correct.
Well, that's, I would assume so. So too, I'm not questioning the design or the capacity of what it is, but what effectively has been done here is you've extended that sewer.
Greg,
You know?
what's the problem with that, though? I'm trying to understand what the problem with that is. I know we're increasing flow, but
No, you know,
I'm trying to, I believe me, I want to hear the argument. I'm trying to figure out what the
Well,
argument.
the argument is you don't have the same situation that the original agreement intended it to be. The original agreement did not intend on, the existing homeowner sharing the cost of a multiple manhole extension of a sewer, and any maintenance issues associated with that could impact him.
Mr.
You see
Tanzi,
what I'm saying?
I've already agreed.
Yeah, I think Mr. Petrosi's going to say exactly what I was just going to say.
We've already agreed that the homeowners association will take 100% responsibility for the maintenance of that line.
Done.
I don't want to hear, that we're adding 3 or 4. If there's a problem with the line, then the homeowners association will be responsible for the line.
Okay, so but what if that additional line impacts the abutter and has a backup and a clog
Then
in
we'll be responsible.
his house?
I mean,
He's saying it right there, Gregor. They're
we'll
taking
be responsible.
responsibility for it.
If they have a problem, then they call whoever we have on call for that type of work, and we fix it. We're not talking about a major issue here. We're talking about a sewer line.
Oh,
It's not likely to clog up.
Especially at the beginning of the line too, a 30-inch main at the very beginning.
Mr. Chairman, the sewer department requires now grinder pumps
Yes.
to be put in before the waste goes into the town's line.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
I can speak to that quickly.
We're providing that grinder pump
Right.
on our property. So anything that we pump into the sewer line is going to be like, what do we call it? Puree? It's sort of like,
Garbage.
there's no substance to it.
Is that going to be one grinder pump for the development or one per unit?
I can show on the plan. I sent the spec over. We used it for Dyer Street. That was 17 units and that was approved. It's a muffin monster. It goes right into the manhole and, as Lou said, grinds the sewage before our connection.
As long as the sewer department is in favor of it, they approve that. Again, I don't see any issues. Mr. Tanzi, I know it. I know the issues you're trying to raise. I just want to make sure that we're looking at it all the same way. We know that there's a potential. There's always a potential for something to go wrong, but the applicant is coming right out and saying that they're more than willing to take 100% of the maintenance cost on this if something happens. Does that satisfy things?
Well, is there a legal instrument that would be binding in that if that situation were to occur?
Attorney Galvin, if we condition it as such, does that take care of it?
Yeah, you make it as a condition.
Done.
Have them put it in writing.
Say again, Mr. Baker?
Have them put it in writing.
We can,
Again, we can condition it as such.
and if the homeowner is willing, we'll modify the easement agreement. I mean, we're talking about simple things. It's just, we're perfectly willing to take responsibility for the line. And if the homeowner wants to modify the easement to reflect that, we're perfectly happy doing that.
Mr. Petrosi, and again, just to refer to that long letter, I think this is the people that we're talking about. They've said that you have never contacted them or you've never reached out to them. Can you do me a favor? If I forward you that letter? Can you
Sure.
reach out?
Sure, just for the record, I did send them a letter as soon as I bought the property and never received a response, call, text, email. Any of the popular forms of communication were never received by any of the abutters, either one.
It's fine. We said that at the site meeting. Mr. Tanzi, what else you got?
Could I see a grading plan? Could you bring up a grading plan?
That looks like it.
Can you zoom in just to the north of the recharge unit?
What's that?
So now, can I see the turning radius plan for the fire hydrant, for fire engine, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got the engine, the fire engine, making a swath over a 3-to-1 slope right on the edge of that driveway. And then there's a retaining wall right at the corner. You know, what would happen in an emergency if that apparatus went over the retaining wall and it's...
We provided a wood guardrail at the end of the roadway, as Pat Brennan suggested, and there is no 3-to-1 slopes located within the roadway. I think it's 1.5% in the road. It's no more than 2.
Not in the road, on the shoulder,
Yes, along the shoulder. And we provided a wood guardrail. The red lines you see here is the bumper overhang. So the black line, if you follow the black lines.
I understand how it, what's being conveyed here. I know how the tracking works, but
Yep.
on paper it's one thing, but during an emergency, let's say building 4, people live there, and maybe their son or their daughter is in a trade and they have an extended van and they've got it parked in the driveway. There's a lot of restriction there, and there's no, I mean, you're gonna paint and stripe all these turnarounds in front of building 4, and
The turnaround itself will be striped and signed for fire lane and no parking. We provided 20-foot long driveways, which I believe your zoning bylaw requires 9 by 18-foot spaces. So we're in excess of the typical parking spaces. Looks like you have another, we'll call it 3-4 feet until you get to the wheel path. So.
And what happens if they have a visitor at the time?
Like we said, there'll be no parking on the street. There'll be no parking in any of the turnaround areas.
This is a very, very dense development. It's got 4 units. This property had a single family house on it. It had to be torn down, regrettably, because this lot was undersized. And now 4 units are just very densely placed on the site. And, you know, you've got a guardrail right next to the retaining wall, but in an emergency, that's not going to stop, you know, a full-size pickup truck, let alone a fire engine. I really have a real issue with the density of this project. They're all condos. I don't see why a 4-unit condo building that looks like a single family residence from the street with parking out back and a you know, an adequate turnaround can't be reworked here with a single sewer line connection, just like what currently exists, so that that sewer issue all goes away. Your site cost would diminish greatly. And, you know, with the units, you could, you know, it's a lot with the construction costs and everything. It's very cost effective to put everything under its own roof. It's cost effective to maintain. And it will do the town a great service. It certainly won't be uneconomic. The land cost was $39,000, which is it's a gift that, you know, I just can't bear to see another, you know, a project that's just too dense for the site when it doesn't have to be that dense. I mean, the housing needs can be done, the profitability can be there, and the burden on the town can be minimalized. I just don't like the density of this project. I don't like the history of this project, and I think something better can be done. I think something better should be done. You know, we've been getting so many of these overly high density projects that are very problematic from a safety standpoint. I mean, this isn't the only one where I've got emergency access issues and concerns. You know, I don't know if there was a fire in one of these units, if the fire chief will allow one of his vehicles to go down that road to fight a fire, because getting the fire truck damaged. I mean, a lot of times they won't go near a house if they're going to endanger the firefighters and have potential, you know, structures collapse onto the fire engines. And I just think there's a better way that this project can meet the needs, meet the goals of 40B without having this level of impact on the neighbors. I think there's just a better and a smarter way of doing it that's less intrusive, that will have less site work costs, less construction costs, and that it would work, and that the delta would be within reason.
Greg, I'm going to cut you off right there. I hear every word that you're saying. We started that conversation at the site at the site meeting. We're long past that. The developer has stated that this is the project that he wants to build. regardless of feelings, we have to look at this as the project that the applicant is putting before us. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's understood. What I do have to ask is, Mr. Shoemaker, I wasn't sure if I was looking at this correct. When it comes to the turning radius, when it comes to the turning of the fire truck, that shows the fire truck pulling all the way in, backing in, and then pulling forward back down the road. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure on that one. And Greg actually did bring up something that I was going to say. The black line is the actual tire track. The
Black
red-
line is the wheel path, red is the bumper. Yep.
Okay, so it's not, basically, it's not going to go all over the curb. It's not even going to,
No.
it's not going to.
No, we designed it for the wheels to be contained completely within the roadway.
And then from there, fire department still, Chief Heaney still has to look at it, or Deputy Chief Heaney still has to look at it and give his okay, correct?
I've sent it to him. He confirmed. I don't want to speak for him, but we'll work on getting a letter.
That's fine. Mr. Tanzi, do you have anything else to add or subtract from here?
I would just like to add that the fire truck, the wheels will stay on the pavement. I know that in an ideal world, without any contingencies, without any human error during panic and stress that an emergency situation will cause. And I just think there's a better way to manage these projects. I just, we've been taking, it's just, when's it gonna stop? And the thing of it is, I've got concerns. I've got concerns about these projects. I really do.
Well, it's understood. That's absolutely understood.
It's safety concerns, Rob. And I just, my personal opinion, I've sat on this board for a number of 40B projects. Maple Woods was one of them. They wanted 108 or 98 units. They cut back. It was 78 units. Bob Manzella did a good job of negotiating and getting something that works. And I just don't see this working for the neighborhood or for the town when there are other options available, and they're more than economic. And that's where I come from. I'm looking at the utility layouts. There's probably like 3 or 4 feet between the gas and the water, and there's an electric line going right through that. If you have to service a water service, you're going to be contending with a gas line. This is not good utility layout. It's just a function of the density of this project. And
Gregor, we're the planning board here. If you don't like the layout, if you don't like the utility layout, you need to suggest something else. You need
I would want the water line to be separated from the gas. I would want the water line to make sure that it's got the setback distances off the sewer line, that things are double sleeved unless they've got the adequate 18-inch vertical separation.
Gregor, it sounds like you need to draw a section view to give to Mr. Shoemaker to see if he can make that
It's
work.
not my charge to design this project. I've got
No, but it is
things on my plate.
But the
I
planning
mean,
board does have specific regulations. They do have, they have profile regulations. They have cross-section regulations that show how far they need this to be.
If I may interrupt, I spoke with the water department. They have no problems with what we're showing. Pat Brennan peer reviewed our utility design, and we, as far as I could see.
Hasn't said anything against it, correct?
Correct.
Right. Saying, Gregor, I hear everything that you're saying. I do. But if you've got something better that you think will work, you have to bring it up. You have to tell them. It's not our job to design this, but it's
Yeah,
again,
but, one condo unit and all those utility issues and clustering and cramming together, it all goes away.
I agree, but the applicant doesn't want to do that.
We're not doing that.
He doesn't want to do that. So we have to look at it from this perspective. If
Yeah, but he
has
can.
every right.
He can do it economically, and he is still getting relief and all kinds of, he's still skirting just about every zoning bylaw that there is out there. I mean, I think these guys can contribute a little bit more to our community than what they've been pushing on us. And I think it's time we push back.
I hear every word you're saying. You know that I hear you. You know that I hear you. But unfortunately, like you said, that it's not our job to design his project. Telling him to switch to one big building at this stage in the game, we're a little bit behind right now. Applicant has already stated many times, not just at this meeting, but he's stated several times that that's not the project that he wants to build. That's why he continues to go this route. I'm not saying I like it any more than you do, but I have to respect the fact that the guy knows what he wants to build. He's coming to us asking for all this relief. If you don't feel the relief is proper, then we figure that out at the end. But again, to tell him that he should, or to recommend that he should change the project at this stage in the game, bad form right now.
Now, this was brought up a while ago too.
Right.
And
he
said
doesn't want to do
He
it.
just said flat out no.
And he has the right to. Just as you do in the end too. So it really comes down to we have to look at what he's proposing. And whether we like it or not, we have to look at it the way that it is. If in the end you don't feel it's correct, then we'll figure that out in the end. But is there anything else you need to say? Because we need to move this on.
No, I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Tansey. Where Mr. Haynes, you've been sitting very, very patiently.
My question seems so simple in comparison to these heady issues we're discussing tonight. So apologies in advance for the boringness of these questions. Thank you for sending over the architectural revisions. I'm still unclear about the relationship between our grading and the architectural plans that I'm looking at. So maybe we could get Eric to sort of take a look with me at our grading plan in relation to the, maybe the easiest thing to look at is there's a side elevation.
Yes, I can't open them both at the same time. Here's the grading and the elevations.
So let's look at the left side elevation because it's got the dimensions on it.
Yep.
And so as I understand it, we're raising the grade from 89, so going from left to right, from elevation 89 at the fence, we're at about 91 at the back side of the house. We're at 92 at the front and driveway. So could you sort of, as you look at this side elevation, kind of just,
Yes.
you see a coordination problem here?
Tim, are you looking at a specific unit, or is this generalized for each one?
The grading, I think, is the same across all of the units.
It's pretty typical of all the units. If I can, I think you're talking something like that, maybe not as steep, but are you referring to the grade change over the side yards?
So, right, we'd be 1 foot below, right, at the the back wall.
At the rear, correct.
The driveway itself is at 92, and the street is at 92, roughly.
Correct.
So if you're looking at this and where the driveway comes in, at the front side of that house, if that's the driveway coming in at 92, again, just looking at the left side elevation.
Yep, driveway, yeah, like you said, coming in at 92. I think I had the first floor elevations at 92 and a half typically.
So does that elevation, do these elevations reflect our grading?
Yeah, I would say it's accurate.
So what would be the grade? So again, under the deck in the back, do you see where your cursor is?
Yes,
So where your cursor is right now, the grade 92, elevation 92 is that line below the hand, right? Right
Yep.
there. That's 92. So go to the back of the house.
oh, I see what you're getting at.
Thank you.
The ground level there. Yeah, it's like you said,
So the house
guess that-
is
that
not
can be-
actually below, like is not actually 3 feet below grade.
correct.
So the house, actually the first floor of the house is 3 feet above the existing grade. We're raising it from 89 to 92.
Yep,
So the ridge of this house is 31. And so this may be a question for Mr. Petrosi. We've got a 2711 mean height. It's not clear that when I look at it, that looks like that should be ridge height, but I'm not sure if he's talking mean to grade, but mean height has a meaning that is not the same as ridge height.
It looks like the 27 is from top of foundation.
Right.
This is why I wanted that. This is why as one of the one of the conditions that I would recommend, that I would want to recommend is individual lot grading plans for each individual house.
Frankly, Rob, I mean, while that may help in the long run, the grading is essentially the same across all of them. It's just the numbers we're looking at don't actually jive with
the
property.
architectural. No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
So just it's been an ongoing question. I've been
May I say that, these are preliminary architectural plans. We can lower the pitch on the roof so that it reduces the, as you'd say, the ridge height. And it wouldn't negatively impact the characteristics of the house architecturally. So if the board feels more comfortable with a lower ridge, we're more than happy to reduce the pitch of the roof. I think these are probably 9 pitches. We could reduce it to a 7 and save a foot or 2, a foot and a half.
So I'm bringing up the issue because obviously we'd love to render a decision for you at some point, but we'd love to just get the information together so we know what we're getting.
Sure.
No, and I hear what he's saying, because if you take the 92.5, which is supposed to be the basement floor, it's supposed to be the garage floor elevation. Mr. Shoemaker, does that make sense? Yes? If you take the 92.5 plus, are we saying 3 feet out of the ground? Is that what I'm looking at? 3 foot of exposed foundation? I know there's going to be there's going to be 92 and then it's going to drop down to 91, but I'm thinking at the back, it's probably going to be close to, let's call it 91, right?
91.
Okay, so the average grade plane between the two, and we have an average grade plane as a part of the zoning in order to
Yes.
calculate. So let's just say 92, let's say you're at 92.5, let's say you're at 91. Is that going to be about 3 feet, about 3 feet of exposed foundation?
I would say, yeah.
Roughly? All right, so take the 92.5, let's work with the 92.5. 92.5 plus 3 plus 27.9 feet. Yeah, right.
Well, no, that wouldn't be accurate at that point, I don't think, because I think what we should do, Mr. Chairman, why don't we prepare as you suggested, a lot, a typical grading for the lot for that particular building that would better explain how this gets built and what the grading is going to be.
Yeah, you really should, because when you add everything up, the elevation
you
at
make
the
it-
top of the building is 123.
Yeah, you
That's-
make a good point, and Eric and I will get together and we'll give the board a better visual of a grading plan for the typical home, because it is relatively a flat site, and it is, one building is probably going to be very consistent with the other building. So
And that makes 100% sense, but pay attention to the adjoining houses. The ridge height is 111 on one side and 115 on the other.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
again, even if you had, hold on, let me just do the math one more time, just so we're clear. 92.5 plus the 27.9, you're already at 120.
Well, let's
That's
take a look.
without an exposed foundation.
Right. Let's take a look at it. There's something that doesn't jive there in my mind at this point, but let's get a grading plan for you for like a one unit individually. And let's see if we can come up with the right numbers and make sure that, because it always has been my intention to make sure that these homes are consistent with the adjoining, abutting properties.
Absolutely. This is one of the reasons why I made sure to have Mackenzie get the roof elevations.
Right.
Good catch, Mr. Haynes.
I have one other question about the plans, and so this is, we may not get an answer to this one unless Tom Rubel is paying attention and with us right now, but there's we're down to 10 feet, I think, between the buildings. And I would like to know what the projection of the fireplace is, not so much for setback, but there is a minimum building code distance between buildings. And I don't know if that fireplace is going to encroach on a required distance between the buildings. So that's something we can always come back to, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware and that we're watching that distance between the buildings. So if Tom wants to weigh in now on it, otherwise we can just
I got you.
an opinion on it at some point.
Yeah, Tim, once they submit the drawings, there's a number of ways you go about that by rating the wall if it's too close to the adjacent property. They can give 1 hour rating wall if they don't meet code. There's different ways you can go about it. And I can't tell you what it is until I see the drawings on how far
I did notice they do have windows on those elevations. So we do have some issues with, in my humble experience, we haven't been able to put windows, within a certain distance on ends. And so I just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. Again, less of an issue, but I just wanted, just as we move forward and we've come down to 10 feet, I just wanted, and there's a fireplace projecting. So I recommend we look at how much that projection is and what difference that makes in terms of what that rating is, especially if you intend to put windows on both ends of the buildings.
Yeah, also on,
That was my
on the grading, you have to have a certain distance from that sill to the grade. You can't bring it right up to that 3 foot mark. You need to be termite protection. So you can't bring the grade right up to that 3 foot. I think Lou knows that, but just keep in mind that grading has to be lower than that foundation.
Mr. Haynes, anything else?
That was it.
Yes, sir.
Question and comment. Thank you.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Galley, you've been sitting waiting, so it's your turn, sir.
Steve, you're
Yeah,
muted.
Until I can't do anything unless you unmute yourself, sir. There you go.
I've been keeping mine muted because I didn't want to have my cat meowing too loud in the background. I didn't have any new topics. I butted in on one question earlier, and I wanted to comment on the fire safety topic brought up by Mr. Tanzi. It sounded like when he was discussing it, it almost sounded like he was having the impression of a runaway fire truck barreling down this, 4-housing development side road into their driveways, the way he was concerned about them going over the end of the driveway and everything. And I would think by the time they enter that lane, they've already slowed down to turn in. So if there was any danger, it would have been when they first turned in. And I don't remember any discussion about them turning in and driving over the doghouse manhole cover or anything like that. So I didn't agree with the concern about the fire truck safety, because once they're leaving, they're done. I don't think they'll be too over adrenalized and driving too crazy to get out of there. So I think entry, I don't think I'm worried about them driving through the end of the lane and leaving. They'll probably be, I don't know, I'm not a fireman, but I would imagine they're not going to be too pumped to drive too fast to get out of there.
That's why I had Mr. Shoemaker kind of expound on the driving. I couldn't understand it at first, but to pull all the way in and back into the turnaround and then turn back out, it does make more sense. But either way, concern was raised. Mr. Galley, what else you got?
The fire safety thing, I was going to say, according to the things I was looking at, does the fire department in Rockland have the final say whether they meet fire safety requirements for the turnaround radius and the fire and all that? Okay.
Deputy Chief Feeney has to approve it based on the design.
Okay, because that would satisfy, if I were a voting member, that would satisfy my requirements on fire safety. But that's what I wanted to say.
Cool.
That's it.
Appreciate it, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Everything that I've had that I had has basically been spoken about. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. Do we want to go over a list of the things that we still kind of need from the applicant? Again, that would be something from water would be nice, even though we could condition it as such. Something from sewer would be nice, although we could condition it as such. Something from fire would be nice. Did we ever get anything from police? From the PD? Did they ever say anything about this? I don't remember ever seeing anything from anybody. Mueller?
I've never heard anything.
You haven't heard anything?
Lieutenant Zioli sent the letter, but they didn't have any problem with it.
They didn't have any, okay, so.
No,
so
the one that I read.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so PD, we're good. Sewer, water, fire.
Site plan.
Yeah, we definitely need a grade. We need a lot grading plan that's going to show how this is actually going to work, because based on the numbers that we've got so far, you're going to blow the elevations of the neighboring houses by potentially 10 feet. So
We are higher elevation wise on the ground to begin with, so it has to be relative.
okay, then you need a ground elevation at the houses then to show what height they are.
Yeah, I think we've done that, right, Eric?
Correct. It's shown on the grading plan.
You have a grade. You have a grade at the base of the house.
I can put spot grades. I was referring to the first floor elevations as well as just the typical lot grading.
No, Lou's talking about the neighboring houses. Then you've got the ridge height, but you don't have the actual building height because you don't have any spot grades around to be able to calculate the average grade plane. So you have to calculate the average grade plane, and then once you get that, subtract the two numbers, and that's your actual house elevation for both left and right. So you need to be able to do that for both left, right, and all your proposed buildings to make sure that we're not going above what they already have for roof heights. You know,
Do we have permission to survey on the abutting properties? To
I
get
can't
those?
give that to you.
We'll communicate with, we'll communicate with them and see what the response is.
See what you can do. There are other ways to deal with it. But again, you have to do some sort of comparison between those building heights left and right, and then the building heights that you want to do. Because again, the intention was to not go any higher than the other two buildings, but I don't see that being possible at this point. But again, you guys will figure that out. And then everything else that Pat Brennan was talking about. Eric, you've been going back, you two are going back and forth off meeting with this, right?
Correct. I'm working on his latest response, our response to our plan. He gave me a review letter on Friday and got it almost finished, and
All right.
been revising the plans as I go.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? Because
Yes, sir.
when we revise these plans, we've been submitting 15 sets of these plans to the board. Is there a way that we could sort of submit just 11 by 17 sets of plans and maybe 2 or 3 full size, or is there any kind of middle ground? I don't know who's looking at these plans that are full size, but seems a bit of a waste of time and paper.
I hear you. Problem is that it's a part of the rules. It's part of the rules and regulations. I know that some of the board members like myself, choose to use digital. So those paper copies to me don't do me any good. I think the board we've talked about this off meeting, just personally every once in a while. Each individual member, I believe, has stated that they're okay with digital. I know Pat requires hard copies. I know we definitely require at least one hard copy for our file.
Yeah.
And I know that the individual water, sewer, police, and fire all require hard copies. So.
And Bob Baker. Let's not
And
forget.
and Mr. Baker, that's right. Mr. Baker requires a hard copy too. So I know that department-wise, there's at least 4 departments, plus Mr. Baker, that's 5. 1 for our copy, that's 6.
One for the highway.
Maybe we could get by with 8 full-size hard copies, and then if anybody else needs any more, we can produce more. I mean, it's just
Town clerk needs a hard copy.
Clark needs a hard copy.
I'm saying about 7 or 8.
Deb, do those numbers work?
I would say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, and then if we need more, we can get them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to provide them.
So we'll start with 8 full-size copies, and then
I'll give you 10 half-size.
11 by 17s or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that all the board? Does that work for everybody at this stage in the game? At this late stage in the game? Okay.
Thank you. That would be great help. Thank you.
No, that's understood. I mean, because we're still on Zoom. It's easier for me without paper, and I've got a 40-inch screen right here. And I'm looking at the full-size plan for crying out loud. So, all right, so that works. What else do we want to deal with? Mr. Galley, I see you.
Just to piggyback on that question about the applicant's question, just about zoning board only. In the future, could we put that on like an updated application to say, supply 8 copies, change that for future applicants, just for their simplicity and efficiency?
You're leading into exactly what I was going to talk about when it came to, after this hearing, when it came to deliberative announcements.
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to go off topic, but it was on.
You're good. You're good. Absolutely, sir.
If I may make a suggestion,
Mr. Tansey, as long as it's not one building.
we should probably keep the same copies, same amount of copies, at least for the initial submittal, so that all departments, the fire, the police, and whoever, the Board of Health, so that
Tansy, I hear
everybody.
you. We gotta keep moving this. We're gonna talk about this after. That's something completely different. That we're gonna talk about this after. All right, what else we got? Everybody okay with everything that we've talked about thus far? The applicant between Mr. Petrosi, Mr. Shoemaker, you know what you gotta do? Yes, you got your marching
Yes.
orders. All right, that's
Yeah.
good. Mr. Rubel is off screen, but if you wanted to say something, I know he would. Mr. Brennan, anything else you need to say? All right,
I'm good for now.
all right, Mr. Rubel, I see you back. Do you need, I didn't come to you for any questions to the applicant. Do you have anything to say, sir?
No, I would just like to see those letters from the departments, fire department, sewer and water. I think that means a lot.
Yes, it does, sir.
That's it.
All right, do we need, are we still under the 180? Are we still under the 180 days? We don't need the
You have plenty of
extension?
time, plenty of time.
All right, so calendar wise, where are we?
March
Yeah.
15th is the next open date.
That puts us on the first and third that's the third Tuesday. All right, so that gets us back to our first and thirds.
Yes, regular schedule. Yep.
Deb, who else is scheduled on that night? So we don't have to worry about being in somebody's way with the planning board or any board or conservation commission or board of health or selectmen or finance committee or.
Selectmen meet that night.
What'd you say?
Selectmen meet.
Selectmen meet the first and third Tuesdays of the month.
This is what I'm saying. There are some people that want to go to the selectmen's meeting, but also want to go to the zoning meeting. So this is my problem with having to coordinate with absolutely everybody. But that's a personal thing. So again, 15th, does that work for Mr. Petrosi, Mr. Shoemaker? Does that work for you guys?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Should give us enough time to meet with all the boards.
Yeah, if that's enough time for you guys, that's why, because if we have to push it, we'll push it one more time.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna say 15th, March 15th at 6:30. I would entertain a motion.
We're gonna ask if the public
Yeah.
has any questions.
You blipped out. What was that?
The public,
Oh,
gonna ask
yeah, if we want to. What time is it? 8:30? Yeah, we got time.
New question.
I'll withdraw my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I will open this up to the public if anybody wants to speak. Let's see, do I have anybody that wants to speak
Yes,
about?
Mr. Chairman,
Who is?
Wayne
Mr.
Boyd,
Boyd,
Wayne Boyd from 340
Yeah.
Concord.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Yes, there was an open question before your site visit around a traffic study and on Concord Street, and I was wondering what the resolution on that one was.
This project does not meet the threshold to require a traffic study.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, hearing none, I'll take I would, yes, sir.
I'm itching.
Are you making a motion, sir?
I am making a motion to continue this matter until Tuesday, March 15th at 6:30 PM.
I would entertain a second. I got a second. Roll call. Myself is a yes. Mr. Baker Senior,
yes,
Mr. Haynes,
Yeah.
Mr. Tansy,
Yes.
Mr. Baker Junior.
Yes,
Done. All right, so we got.
Oh.
Wait, dude, what was that, Mr. Baker Junior or Mr. Senior, Mr. Baker
you
Senior?
forget yourself. all the
Oh,
time.
yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Sorry about that. I always forget myself. All right, so we've got the March 15th, 6:30 PM. Again, Mr. Shoemaker, Mr. Petrosi, you have your marching orders. Everybody knows what they have to do. Perfect. All right. We'll see y'all at, on the
Motion to
15th.
adjourn.
Well, we got, don't we have the deliberative stuff that we have to deal with? We're not adjourning just yet.
You wanted to talk about the stuff.
Yeah, there's other things that we have to talk about.
Okay.
You're done with me and Mr. Schumacher.
Absolutely. You and your team, Mr. Brennan, you can take off. Mr. Shoemaker, thank you for showing up. Yeah, this is just a couple of things that the board has to take care of.
Great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
All right, we are at non-deliberative announcements and scheduling. All right. Now, we had talked about this a while ago. It kind of went by the wayside a little bit. Number one, we got to look at the zoning board's rules and regulations. We got to update these. We got to make them, I don't know. They haven't been touched in a while, and some of the things that have been changed, they're all just penciled in there, and it needs to read a little bit better. The other thing is,
Need a working session, right?
yeah, see, that's it. This is what I was talking. This is another one of those things that I wanted to talk about, a working session where we all get together and start talking about the zoning bylaw itself. There are a lot of things that I think all of us have complained about every once in a while when it comes to the zoning bylaw. This is the opportunity that we as a board can come together, put our heads together. We will have to incorporate the planning board because they have to endorse it as well. But I think that this would be a good time. Because again, Mr. Galvin, Attorney Galvin, you could probably answer this for me. We don't have town meeting for a little while, correct?
Yes, but we are beginning the process of preparing articles for the Springtown meeting.
Right. So we're starting to run out of time. So we kind of got to make this. We kind of got to make this quick. So my question is, does this have to be a public meeting? Number one, and number two, if it does have to be a hearing, a scheduled hearing like this, does it have to be public, or can it be closed session, or should it be closed session?
Are you talking about rules or changes to the bylaw?
Both.
Okay, so rules can be changed in any public meeting as long as the agenda mentions that you're gonna change rules.
Okay.
And a proposal to change the bylaw can also be in any public meeting, provided you identify on the agenda with reasonable specificity the fact that you're contemplating zoning bylaw changes. You don't have to hold any public hearing in order for the town to act on a zoning bylaw change.
Mhm.
Only the planning board does.
Okay.
So the planning board has to have time to schedule a public hearing on a zoning bylaw change sufficiently in advance of town meeting.
That's where I was going. So
But the meeting that we have to discuss this has to be a public meeting.
Yeah, every time you're discussing something that's within the scope of your authority, it has to be done in a open meeting.
Deb, when's our next meeting?
Our next meeting, excuse me, we have February 1st and then February 15th.
See where we are here. So we have a meeting next week.
Yes,
3 in a row for us.
Okay. And then you said, what was the next one after that?
February 15th.
Okay.
Do we have anything on the agenda for the first, for next week?
Yeah, we're gonna have 55 Acorn Park Drive, Crystal Analytical. A permit for they test like construction materials.
Okay.
And what do we have on the 15th? Anything?
On the 15th, we have 75 Market Street, Village Medical in Walgreens, similar to like the CVS Minute Clinics.
Oh,
Okay.
I got a question.
If I requested each member of the board and each member of the associate members of the board to maybe come up with, if they feel that it's necessary, one change to the zoning bylaw and one change to the application sheet, maybe we talk about it next meeting.
Yep. Are we limited to one each or?
Okay, Mr. Baker Jr., if you want to take that entire bylaw and modify the heck out of it, I encourage you to do so, because like I said, we did as the zoning in past years, Bob Manzella was always the one who took it upon himself to go through and just bring up different things that he thought needed to be changed. Very rarely was it ever opened up to us. Even though we had the permission to do it, we had the right to do it, it was never really opened up to us. I want everybody to be able to take a look at this and see if there's something that needs to be changed, to the point where I am going to sit down with Mr. Rubel and get his opinion too, because he always has something that he wants or he thinks should be or could be changed. So if you want to come up with one for each, the bylaw itself, as well as, one for the bylaw and one for the application itself, or the application rules and regs, a minimum of one, it just shows we're all thinking about it. If you want to go for 5, if you're going to go for 12.
10 minutes.
What did you say?
But a maximum of 10 minutes talking time.
Thank you. Okay, there you go.
You can present as many
Thank you,
options as
Tim.
want.
You just took all the fun out of it.
Deb, your voice, there you go.
So the, do you want to do a quick review of the comprehensive permit application rules, because they're separate? Like we were talking earlier about the submittal of the number of plans of hard copies or whatever. I think it says something like 28.
All right, then let's do that. One for Deb, if you could do each of us a solid. I'm assuming that you have a copy of, because anytime I need to go to zoning, I go to the E360 code, online. Do you have not a hard copy, do you have a PDF copy of the zoning?
Zoning what? What zoning? Like everything?
The
Yeah.
The current bylaw.
Well, I could print it out.
No,
I
PDF.
use the website.
You use the website also?
Yeah, I print out from that.
Is everybody okay using the website?
You've got these awesome books
Yeah, just,
put together.
sorry for my ignorance, but I just want to make sure I go to the right place. I don't know if someone just email a link to dumb it down for me.
Deb, can you do that?
Yes.
All right, so Deb's going to email everybody a link to the E360 code. That's number one. From there, you have a Word doc for both the comp rules and the regular permit app.
No. I have a Word doc for the application. I do not
Yes.
have a Word doc for the comprehensive permit rules.
Really?
You know what? Let me check with the town clerk tomorrow.
Whatever you can grab, even
Okay.
if it's a Word doc, it would just.
I mean, I
anybody
can make one if I have to.
Oh, there's so much to it,
I know, but I mean, if it's gonna be done, it's gonna be done.
and it's to make any modifications. This I feel like is why everything's always been handwritten in there for modifications.
Why don't
Can I
you
ask
just
one
set-
more question?
Why don't you just set aside 15 to 20 minutes at the February 1st meeting and just ask each other to read the rules and identify anything you think might need to change. And you can brainstorm at that meeting and then kind of decide what you want to change. Everybody just take them and read them and see what you want to change, I would tell you, there's a good reason why you have to have that many copies of plans come in. Typically, it's because sometimes there's major revisions to plans, and technically you're supposed to give out to the major town departments a set of
Right.
plans and get comments back every time you get a new set of plans.
Right.
That's why it's done that way.
Oh yeah, no, believe me, I did that. I understand. It's just so many copies because again, copies going to Board of Health, they're not even looking at it. Copies going to Planning Board. Planning Board's not looking at it. It's the main departments in the town: the sewer, the water, the fire, the police. Those are the 4 big ones that we're really concerned about.
Yeah, question.
Mr. Galvin.
You were talking about, just made me think about it. If we were just counting how many departments get a copy, but did we account for how many members of the departments or committees need a copy within those committees?
One per department.
So we only are required to get one per department.
One per department. The only board or committee or department that gets multiple copies, us.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure we're covering the bases.
Oh, yeah, no, you're doing the right thing. Mr. Baker Jr.
Mr. Chairman, in response to Mr. Galvin's recommendation, would it be possible to do one on the 15th instead of the 1st? I just don't seem having enough time to get my recommendations.
I
ready for the
understand.
1st.
I'm just I agree with you. I absolutely, because I know 1 week really isn't necessarily enough time for anybody to do anything now. I'm thinking just as soon as we can, just to get something into planning board so they can make their determination. When is spring, Attorney Galvin, do you know when spring town meeting is?
I think it's May 2nd.
But they have a shut off date for the warrants, don't they?
Yeah, the warrant, I don't think it's open yet, but it'll probably be open in February.
All right, I'll call Sue tomorrow and find out what that close date is. Because we're gonna have to get it in with the planning board. So I don't know what their schedule is. I have no idea what their schedule is, but we are gonna have to get it in there too. So if everybody's cool with it, you want to say the 15th? We'll talk on the 15th. Everybody have a little bit of information. Deb, you got a
Can I just say
question?
one more thing? I think if we amend the comprehensive permit rules, I believe we can charge a 10% administrative fee to developers, but it's not in our specific rules. So that no,
Now,
Shaking his head.
that gets set aside. We can charge them a peer review fee based on a scope of services. And they can technically appeal the selection of a peer reviewer, but you can't charge an administrative fee.
okay,
You can charge a fee for an application, but the fee that you charge has to be no more than you would charge for a conventional development too.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
there were a number of cases where towns tried to actually pass off the legal cost of town council attending the meetings and giving advice, and the HAC has quickly disposed of that practice and said that it's not lawful. And you can't really charge more than what you would charge a conventional developer, but you can always charge for peer review like we've been doing with Pat Brennan and anybody else that he might use, or any wetlands people, or any of those consultants.
Okay,
All right, Deb.
that's all right. The accountants mentioned that, not me.
All right, so cool. We're 15th. We'll talk about this on the 15th. Yes.
Yes.
Everybody's cool. All right, Deb, make sure to add that to the agenda on the 15th. All right, rock and roll. Anybody else? I think that's all we got.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn. I got a second all over the place. Mr. Baker, is that a yay or nay? Yay. Myself is a yay. Mr. Haynes,
Yes.
Mr. Baker Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Tanzi, don't look so sad.
I'm cool.
You're stuck in the closet again, sir.
Yeah.
You in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Yes.
All right, smoke them if you got them. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.